Good evening. Welcome. What a crowd. I love it. Hi, my name is Stephen Davey. I'm the senior producer here at WBUR CitySpace. It's great to see all of you on a chilly evening. Yes, January, okay. But, for anyone doing dry January, this is the last night, okay? Andrea. And it's truly thrilling to see so many of you out here utterly devoted to WBUR, NPR, and public media. Thank you for your belief in the work we do and for your enduring support. We could not do it without you. From our daily journalism, local, national, international, to our slate of amazing and innovative podcasts, newsletters, and nights just like this at CitySpace, our home for live journalism and cultural conversations. Think this evening as a gift, our thank you to you, our loyal WBUR members. We've arranged to have a chance to spend an evening with the talented photojournalists we're lucky enough to call our colleagues and have right here in the newsroom, Jesse Costa and Robin Lubbock. As you know, public radio is more than the voices you hear on the radio, so much more. Here at WBUR, we believe in journalism and reporting that reach deeply into society and bring you the stories that matter most to you, most wherever you are, driving, cooking, reading our award-winning website, or scrolling on your phone. That's fine, too. We know that hearing the compelling voices broadcasting on our airwaves leaves an indelible impression. But we also know that the photographs taken from, say, more than 740 feet in the air atop One Dalton, when it was under construction in Back Bay, or bobbing in the ocean beneath a towering wind turbine, or capturing the exact moment when a dancer makes their most impressive spin. These breathtaking moments can make the biggest stories of our time and our home a lasting memory. Tonight, we've crafted a special evening to immerse you into our reporting like never before. As you've seen on the screen while you were walking into the theater, Jesse and Robin's photographs have the power to transport you to places, people, and stories like only photography can. Helping us along our visual journey tonight is WBUR host of All Things Considered, Lisa Mullins. And we have a few special guests tonight as well, reporters Andrea Shea, Simón Rios, and Barbara Moran. We're going to see some brilliant photography and explore the stories and those photographs tell. But we're also planning to open the curtains and reveal the stories behind the photos. As the World War II photographer and co-founder of Magnum Photography, Robert Capa famously said, "If your pictures aren't good enough, you aren't close enough." Rest assured, Jesse and Robin get very close, so you don't have to. Now, please welcome Jesse Costa, Robin Lubbock, and Lisa Mullins.
And this is Robin, and we have microphones so you can hear us better. So, by the way, Stephen Davey, who is a master at everything, is training for the Boston Marathon, so you might want to give him an extra round of applause, so cheer him on. So thank you so much for coming here. It's great to have members here for all sorts of reasons, including the fact that you feel like family. You listen to us when we fundraise, or at least you call in and go online. And it's like family that we don't argue with. So thank you. You will have a chance to ask questions tonight. So please do. And you see there is slido.com. Hashtag WBUR. We've got so much to get through tonight. First, if you haven't turned off your cell phones, please do that. There are many topics, I think somewhere around almost a dozen topics that we're going to cover with photographs for all of them, and time in between that for you to ask your questions. So much to talk about. I guess one of the things first is for both of you, you work for a radio station, or primarily a radio station. We don't even have TV. So what the heck are photographers doing working for a radio station? You haven't thought about that, huh? Beats me.
No, I get it all the time. Even now, it's 2024, people. It's just wake up. But I do have a joke that whenever I am asked about this, I tell them, it's like, well, there's a special radio that you have to buy. And as soon as the stories start playing, the Polaroids start coming out.
Robin?
I think you do get. Oh, I'm sorry. You do get that question
He's
a lot.
not used to it.
But generally, I think people approach you. They say that look comes over their face. Oh yeah, I get it. Yes, of course. There's that other thing going on.
The digital thing going on.
Yeah.
So another question, in all honesty, do we get in your way as reporters? Like, do you just?
No.
Oh, come on. I'm sure. Because half the time, when we're out in the field and Jesse or Robin are trying to take pictures, like the reporter is going like, you want me back up? It's okay. And you're very kind to say, no, that's okay. Or, yeah, can you move? Yeah. Are we in your way? Jesse.
It's kind of a delicate dance that we have to
It
do.
is, yes.
It's two mediums that don't necessarily go together when you're in the middle of reporting, So yeah, I mean, it's a matter of communication. It's a matter of just trying to decide at the last minute. It's like, what's most important, the sound or the visual?
That's right. So we're watching for you because we know that you may have a visual that you really want, and hoping that there's not sound that we really want going on at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just very briefly, Jesse, how'd you get into this?
Press photography?
Yeah.
I didn't actually start doing it until I came here.
What drew you to it?
Probably when I was first hired in 2007, I was doing primarily graphic design. And, when I was hired to do graphic design, data viz, photography, and videography, mainly because they had taken 4 jobs and put it all into one. And not too many people were doing that kind of thing back then, But I could do it all. And, photography's been something that it's been a part of my life most of my life, and the technical aspects of photography I had totally down. I never really had a problem with it, but in 2009 we redesigned the website that used to be a brochure site, and then we turned it into a news site, and then all of a sudden everyone was like, oh, well, we need photos for all these stories that we're publishing. So they started sending me out, and once they started sending me out, they saw what I was bringing back, and they were like, okay, this is what you should be doing,
And Robin, you do the same thing as well. You also do videos. How did you get into it?
I was interested in photography at college. It was black and white film back then, so a lot of, developing, printing, all of that stuff. After college, I worked for a little while with a commercial photographer to sort of learn all of the, properties of lenses and all that sort of stuff, color, how that all works. And then I worked in London as a photographer in Fleet Street, doing sort of mostly tabloid stuff, again, black and white film. The best way we could move a picture in those days was by fax, actually. And we would print the pictures up and run them literally to the picture desks on Fleet Street. So a lot has changed since then. After that, I went to Central America, where I was interested in there's a lot of civil war going on there, a lot of revolution, and I was a young man interested in that sort of stuff. I spent 3 years in El Salvador covering Central America, the last 3 years of the war. And then after that, briefly in the States, 4 years in Africa, and then over here.
So why don't we start off talking about, so we can see the photographs here on this monitor as you'll see them back there. And there may be some that you particularly want to ask a question of, so feel free, again, to write into Slido. There is a story that I worked with you on, Robin, along with our producer, Lynn Joliker, who I think might be in the audience. Lynn, are you here yet? Lynn was, where? Oh, there she is. You can speak. So Lynn was actually just got finished on the air because I was down here, and she's going out tonight to cover the homeless population, the census tonight, so she'll be out until about 2:30 in the morning, and Robin is going to be going with her, so the evening doesn't end for these guys after tonight ends. But when we three went out to cover a really hard story, cannolis, some of which are hard, some not so much, but this was just in time for the holidays, and there were about 12 places in the North End bakeries that used to make their own cannolis and pastries, et cetera. They're now like three major ones: Modern, Mike's, and Bova. And so we focused on Mike's and Bova in particular. And there are some really, you can see, like, yeah, that's great. I don't know if that's Mike's or Bova. But there are some really interesting pieces of sound that we got. And of course, this is really a visual story as well. So what we look for as reporters is the character that you can find in the story, and also what's happening, how they make these things in the traditional way, because this is all immigrant families who are still running these places. And I wonder if you can tell us, Robin, like how you happen to get some of the photographs that you have. This is one of the Bovas there who's making the cannolis. The photographs, what you're looking for, because you're looking for sort of action, but then you're looking for the lusciousness of the cannolis themselves. Tell us about that.
Well, food photography is definitely a thing that people spend their whole lives doing. I'm sorry. So, it's because it's hard to photograph food and make it look nice. That was at the back of my mind with every shot I took of this. But I think, as with any story that we do, we start with, it's not just about the food, it's about the story. So the few pictures back from this one, there was a picture of Hanover Street with the moon sinking. And that was, we were there all evening. And there was a moment where the light was nicely balanced along the street with the street lights, Mike's sign, the moon just hanging right in the middle of the street there. So I had to have that. I worked on that for a little bit. And then just as you were talking to Joe and this is Pat, I was just wandering around behind you. Sometimes, as you said, do we get in each other's way? There was the bit where you really wanted to get in the oven with the microphone. I think actually that was Lynn doing that. But between the three of us that night, we found a way to get everything that we wanted. There was the shot of Jojo with the cannolis laid out, with the batter laid out?
I don't know if we have that one, Stephen. If we have it, maybe you can show us that one. But I know we do have a little bit of audio here to match a photo, and this is Jojo, who's I think the great grandson of the owner, Joseph, whose son was Big Joe, and then there was Joe, and this is Jojo, and he works overnight, and that's when we were there late at night, and we saw the array of fantastic cannolis, a lot more than they used to start with, and so we asked him about that, and here's what he said.
Creme brulee, Nutella, salted caramel, Oreo, cappuccino, peanut butter, pistachio.
Would your ancestors turn up their nose at like cappuccino cannolis?
No, if they seen how much money we were making.
So I want to move from the fantastic cannolis. And by the way, I have to say that the Florentine cannoli, which is what they specialize in at Bova, is really fantastic. Oh, you're seeing the picture there now. So that's Jojo and the Florentine cannolis. And I can't remember what that is that he's cutting there. Lynn, you probably remember.
That's the batter that he's going to throw in the pan.
Oh, the dough for it, yeah. So I want to move on now. Completely different story. So many of you know the nickname Mass and Cass, Massachusetts Avenue and Milnia Cass Boulevard, as being the place where many homeless people have been part of an encampment. There is violence there. There's opioid addiction. It's a dangerous place to go. And I think both of you probably have been there many times, and Jesse, I know you have. But maybe we can look a little bit at a couple of the photos there. And Jesse, since you've spent years covering it, what do you look for in a place like Mass and Cass, where I should say, I think also reporters and photographers really have to prepare in terms of what you wear when you go there. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's a really dangerous place, or at least it was. It's not the same as it was now that they've cleared it out. And now the police are patrolling that whole area every day, every night. I wouldn't rarely ever go down there alone. A few times I was I was asked to go down, and I did, and it's quite scary, especially when you're carrying around $10,000 worth of photo equipment, because as soon as you start talking with one person, next thing you know, like in 10 minutes, you've got a whole dozen of people curious about what you're doing there and everything, and then they're like, oh, well, it's like, that's nice equipment. And that's when you got to make your exit and sort of move on.
You wear steel-toed shoes when you go there?
Say that again.
Steel-toed shoes?
Yeah.
Do you? Because I know the reporters
I don't.
do.
No.
Because there are syringes all over the place.
Yeah, there are.
It's a real hazard.
It's
Tell us about the photos.
it's hard it's hard to explain, but trying to tell that story is so difficult because you've got a group of people that don't want to be exposed, they don't want to be identified, but you're still trying to tell the story in a way that illustrates the issue that's going on down there, and I don't think a lot of people understand like how crazy it is. But
Can you describe what it was like in some of these photos? Any that bring back memories?
no, I mean, like I said, it's hard because you've got a very defensive group of people that want to be left alone. And basically they're screaming at you as you're walking through, and I mean there have been many times where I've just walked through there with my wearing cameras, and obviously I'm just like a walking billboard because I have 2 cameras that are hanging off my shoulders. But as soon as I start walking through, they're like screaming at me, expletives and everything. It's just like, don't take my picture, don't take my picture.
Can you describe this photo? What's happening?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the scene here where people are passed out on the street. I mean, people are doing drugs right in front of you. I mean, you're just standing there, and they're just like, it's sad.
In a case like this, do you know if that person is alive? Okay.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
You can't.
I mean, I actually watched a security officer. I have a picture of him walking past him, looking at him, just but didn't just looked at him and wasn't sure whether or not he was alive or what. I mean, this picture here tells it all. I mean, everything's happening right in front of you, and I know that a lot of times I have a hard time convincing people that this is the way that it is. It's it's all out in the open. I mean, it's not like this anymore, obviously, because they're not there. But that's what it was like with all the tents, with especially when it was expansive. It was blocks and blocks and blocks of tents, and you had like all sorts of stuff going on.
Right.
It was like a city all on its own.
Right.
So
a question from the audience: are you good at convincing people who don't want a picture of them taken, because that's a skill as well?
Yeah, I mean, I try to respect everyone's wishes, and I don't want to the last thing I want to do is ruin someone's life because they happen to be in a bad spot in their life. So, when I do go down into a situation like that, I'm always mindful that I don't want to identify them.
So normally you would ask somebody for their permission and their names.
I mean, I've gotten permission from people. They're like, "Oh yeah, you can take my picture. You can take my picture while I'm shooting up or I'm smoking crack or whatever." And even still, I can't use that photo because I don't want to ruin that person's life. Because I know that perhaps 2 or 3 years down the road after they clean up, if they clean up, that they're probably going to regret that they gave me permission to do what I wanted to do. And then, I mean, there are other layers that go on top of just my own discretion. I mean, we have editorial guidelines that that we have to follow as well, and it would never get that far.
Right.
But at the same time, I mean, this is a story that needs to be told. It needs to be illustrated. It needs, people need to know. And this is the only way that I know how to do it, because if I don't get in there and I don't show people what's going on, no one's ever going to know.
So that is one kind of story, and obviously you hear it on the air, and you get a whole different perspective on it. The sounds, the people's voices, the characters. There are so many other stories we want to talk about, and to help us do that, we have three very special guests tonight. Andrea Shea, Simón Rios, and Barbara Moran are coming up to the stage now, and these are three reporters you've probably heard a lot from, who've already been working today, and
Interrogated.
being interrogated. We're asking the questions this time. You're giving the answers. So why don't we start off with the environment? Because some of the photos that I think people have seared in their memory, I mean, we all live with blizzards, for instance, but then we see pictures, and so everything suddenly is a still shot, and it's like, wow, how did you guys get that? So I want to ask you, Jesse and Robin, and I want you guys to weigh in on these questions as well, the answers as well. Some of the shots that we have, that's a stunning one. Who took that? Do you remember? You guys, they don't even remember sometimes, which is, sometimes they're like, oh no, I got that shot because I would have done this, I would have done that. Okay, who got this? And who asked the person to tell the dog to jump?
No, it was me.
Yeah.
Basically.
Oh, go ahead.
Now we're talking.
No, but, I mean, it just happened. It wasn't like I
Wow,
asked.
and you have to be really quick.
Yeah, I mean, you're watching what's going on, and a lot of times you have to anticipate what's going to happen.
Yes.
And I saw her throwing snowballs, and he wasn't actually reacting. But,
And then you said, I want to take a picture.
but as I was, walking over, and once I set up, all of a sudden he just dove up into the air, and it was perfect. It was awesome.
Now I have to say, what is this photo? Right there?
Snowplows.
What is it? Snow pals?
What, this
Is
one?
this? Okay, but I just want to know, which of you really likes going out in the snow? Because when there's a blizzard, we know one of you is going to have to do it. Which one hates it and which one likes it? Or do you both like it?
We tend to both do it, I think.
You both, I
Both
know,
do
but do you
it, and
like
we
it?
both hate it.
It depends what the weather's like. If it's nice, crisp snow that's bouncing off you, that's great. If it's wet sleet that's just soaking
This
through
is the
you,
problem.
this
I
is
don't
not good.
need environmental pictures of nice snow.
Yeah,
that's the thing. We
right.
need it to look,
Well, that looks pretty nice.
That's
No,
a
I think
pretty
it's
nice
too
one.
nice. It's like,
That's
woo, fun.
So, Barb, since you have the floor, you cover. That's right. You don't need nice pictures because you cover climate change.
Right.
Because that's huge. Yeah, that's a nice one too. Because climate change obviously is a major focus of what we are covering. Now that's a nice angel photo. Love that. So yeah, that's great. So look at this. Oh my God, who got that one?
I got that one. There was a group of people skiing in Boston Common.
Yeah, excellent. So, Barb, I want you to tell us a little bit about, and the photos will come up, extreme weather events and rising sea levels because of climate change. What is it like for you as a reporter to cover this? And I want to know for you guys as photographers what it's like as well, because I don't know if in one story you both get what you need, or if you have to go out separately and demonstrate the photos that prove the story, that show the story illustrated. Barb, what's it like?
Yeah, it's hard because a lot of the stuff we're talking about is sort of what might happen in the future, right? Or what will happen in the future. And it's hard to sort of get examples of it happening now. But there are often times where there's these really high tides or really hot days or this kind of thing, right? Where I'm like, Robin, there's a big high tide today. Can you run down to, can you run down there and get it?
She is like that.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. And then, and then it's like, we have these really hot days and Robin and Jesse go out and get these beautiful all these people having a great time in the sun, and I'm like, can we get a little bit of suffering, maybe?
Yeah, but the one time I did bring someone suffering, nobody liked the photo. They didn't even use it.
See, that's the thing. Like, what's the proportion of photos you take to the amount that are used on the web?
Well, it depends. I don't know. It depends. It's
It can be, you take a lot. You take hundreds of photos.
yeah. I mean,
in the course of a couple
like,
hours.
Like this afternoon, I worked a presser, and I probably
Press conference.
took a few hundred photos of Mayor Wu and Governor Healy, because you want to get them in a manner that like looks good.
Yes.
I mean,
Right. And you find one or
you
two
want to
that
get
are
that
going to go on.
expression. You want to get that perfect.
Right.
Them talking and.
Excuse me for 1 second. What is this photo? Why don't we stop here, Steve, for a second? What is it? Oh, sorry.
See, now we're
we
back
can't
to
go
happy people.
Oh, now we're back to the happy. Yeah. So some of the photos that you get, just curious. Okay, well, we've got the happy ones. I think they can't go back on these. So there was one, where was the place where you lost 2 cameras?
Oh, it was in Winthrop, right on the border of Winthrop and Revere City lines. It's Winthrop Beach Parkway, and there's a seawall there, and we saw a couple of photos from there where the waves during storms just like hit the seawall really hard. And I happened to be up on a hill during Hurricane Sandy. I mean, Hurricane Sandy is infamous for hitting New York really hard, but we were kind of whisked by it. And there were some pretty violent waves that were hitting the seawall, and I was up on top of this hill that sort of like overlooks looks down upon it. And this wave just like came in, hit the seawall, came up, hit everybody that was sitting on the hill, including me. I was totally soaked, and the person next to me looked at me and she's like, "Oh, is your cameras okay?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And I probably got about like 1 or 2 more photos out of them and killed both of them all at the same time.
Oh, God, that hurts. Is this, who took these photos, by the way?
Yeah, this is Situate.
This is Situate.
This is where there's a lot of really bad flooding. This is downtown.
Yeah, this is our favorite spot for high tide flooding. That's a good one too.
You might have noticed before there were a number. There's one of my favorite places to go when the tide is up is right on the Long Wharf there, in that I forgot what
The chart house.
Yeah, the chart house. So there was one time when it was in a storm down there. It was all snowy. And the second one was sort of on an average day, but a high tide. The third one, I don't know if you noticed, totally blue sky. So I'm, worried when there's a storm and this happens. But when it's a totally blue sky day, that's what we got to look forward to. That's where it's going to come.
It was spooky, right? Because we were down there for the king tide last month or 2 months ago, when it's all like pretty, and then all of a sudden the water's like coming up very ominously, and it was weird, right? And it's like up to your knees pretty quickly.
On the end there,
Yeah.
just like this.
Yeah.
Clear sky and the flooding in the front.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I feel about it, the awesome power of this water as it comes in.
Yeah.
You're standing there, you see it, and it's just like, wow. This one time, do you remember when we were down by Belle Isle Marsh?
I do. Yeah.
What
Remember
happened?
what happened to you that evening?
The time I waded into the swamp.
Oh yeah.
And
Good.
I ended up, my muck boots sucked me down, and I was recording myself, envisioning some great story, and I fell down and recorded the whole thing. You guys weren't there for that part. That was earlier.
No.
And then, I mean, we're looking for like the worst possible situation, which is like, horrible to witness, but at the same time, you have this like, you're rooting for it in a way, because
This is Winthrop.
What I remember from that night
Yeah.
is we were down there. You emerged covered in mud. We met on top of the bridge, which has Belle Isle Marsh on one side and it has Suffolk Downs on the other. And it's a point where the water flowing off Suffolk Downs flows out to the ocean, and there's a sort of pump house there.
Right.
That if the ocean is low, you can pump the water out and stop Suffolk Downs from flooding. But of course, if the tide is high, there's nowhere to put it. That night, we were on that bridge. The tide had come in. It was a calm night. It was like midnight, right?
Yeah.
And we're looking out these dark waves out there, and there's this place where there's a grill across the road where they actually pump the water out,
overpass,
and you can
bridge
look
type
down.
thing.
Yeah, and you can look down and see where the water is, and the water was like 6 inches under the road, and just the feeling of this huge thing coming at us, and just right there on the edge of the road,
Yeah.
and the thought, wow, if it goes up another foot,
And there was a train track.
yeah, the blue line.
The blue line, like right near there, and you get the sense that, like, wow, you know, in a couple of years, this keeps going up inch by inch, and all that infrastructure is toast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Blue Line's marshalling yard is right on the edge of Belle Isle Marsh there. So it's all very vulnerable, yeah.
So, you know, you
Oh,
think of,
seems
of,
that way.
of the photos that you take, and you must feel in some instances, like when you're covering Mayor Wu, whatever, you're in control of the situation. You know exactly what you're going to do. In these cases, you're almost in awe of the situation because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if you're going to fall in the middle of the muck, if you're going to be taken in by a tide, if your equipment is going to get washed away or demolished by a wave. I mean, this is a different kind of story.
Yes.
Yeah. Really. I mean,
So
it's a bit,
we try to be careful.
It's a
we
bit
try
humbling.
to be careful. We try
Sure.
to keep our cameras as dry as we can. And
yeah, I bet. Can we talk a little bit about decommissioning the Pilgrim nuclear power plant? Barb, I wonder if you can tell us about this story.
Yeah. I just have to say, I always feel bad because I look at these stories, you do like cannolis. I'm like, oh, that's nice. They get to go and I always drag them out to these like horrible flooded places. I'm like, let's go to the nuclear power plant. Let's go to the garbage dump. Anyways,
story.
Pilgrim is the nuclear power plant that was in Plymouth that closed 4 or 5 years ago now-ish.
2019.
Something. Well, we've been following it all along before it closed and as it closed and now as they're taking it down piece by piece. And there's a lot of controversy about how they're dismantling it. What?
I was going to say,
know something.
that's the top of the reactor. That's standing on top of the reactor.
Oh, yeah.
That last one. And this is looking into the spent fuel pool. So the first picture was when it was live, when it was running. This is when they're trying to remove the
Fuel rods.
The fuel rods from the reactor, put them in the spent fuel pool for a couple of years,
Yeah.
and then you'll see where they go next in a minute.
Yeah. I was just thinking of isn't it fun to have to wear a dosimeter?
Yeah.
What is that?
To see if you're getting nuked.
Oh,
The thing you wear, right? Yeah.
Were you getting
That's
nuked?
good. So
But
what's
here's-
this, Robin?
Well, this is, I think, the irony of nuclear power, right? There's these are the casks where the fuel ends up, and
The spent fuel.
the spent fuel. So we've got this nuclear power. It's this huge, ominous, awesome thing that could, give us a lot of power, and it could also give us a lot of refuse. But this here is the refuse. Actually, I think this is about half of it, but they put the stuff in the casks. All 50 years worth of nuclear waste that went through that power station is still on the site in these casks. So you've got to ask yourself, well, 50 years of a coal power station, how much ash would that create? So I think it's interesting.
Doesn't seem so bad.
Well-
who wouldn't want that in their backyard? Yeah,
No, I'm not
except
saying
it'll
that,
be there forever.
but
yeah, no, it's cool, right? It was cool seeing that.
Yeah.
what are they
and
doing with that now, Barb, by the
What
way?
do you mean it's sitting there forever?
Just there?
Yeah,
That's its final resting place?
I'm afraid so. Yeah, yeah. There's nowhere else to put it. That's the thing. Yeah, right. And so the controversy is going. So they still have all the water there that was used to cool the fuel rods. That's radioactive water, and there's an ongoing fight with the state and the federal government about what they want to do with it. They want to discharge it into the bay, into Cape Cod Bay, which is that water, and nobody likes that idea. So now they're just slowly evaporating it, and it's just I don't know. It's weird. It goes on. We'll be back down there Again,
as we were recently for some protests, which I think might be in the next picture.
yeah.
Well, right now, before we see any others, we're actually going to go to a much different kind of place.
No?
With a
Where are we
different kind
going?
of ambience. We're going. You'll find out now because you're going to talk about it.
Uh-oh.
We're going to Maine to talk about
Oh.
loons. And this is one of Miriam Wasser, our environmental reporter's stories. Wow. As if on cue. This is great audio that she got there. It's a loon chick wailing in the distance, and you can also maybe hear a little bit of water lapping against the side of the boat that you just saw there. Barb, this is, yeah, it's pretty great. This is when the reporter says to everybody, like, shut up, don't say anything. What's the story about?
So this is a story that Miriam Wasser, one of our reporters, did while I was the editor of the team, and it was about trying to restore the loon population to Massachusetts. There are all the loons have been gone from Massachusetts for a while, but there's still some in Maine. So they're trying to sort of attract some from Maine to set up camp in Massachusetts. So Miriam's like, oh, I want to start. I'm like, that sounds nice. That sounds like a fun little story. And then like it just went. A year, it went on, and she's like, I'm going back up to Maine. And I'm like, oh, you're going back up to Maine again? You and Jesse are going back to Maine again. How long is this going to take? And then, and I mean, the pictures came out amazing, but I think this is a testament to how long it takes to get sound and pictures from uncooperative wildlife.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was a matter of It was a matter of timing, really. Because if I remember correctly, Miriam was on her honeymoon when I first started going up there. And I probably made like 5 or 6 trips up there. And so the whole idea is that what they're doing is that at night they go out and this is like in Sebago, this is in some of the other lakes that are even further north in Maine that take hours to get to. And what they're doing is they're extracting young loon chicks. Basically, the whole idea is once they get the chicks, they bring them down to southeastern Massachusetts, and what happens with the loons is once they learn how to fly, or once they get their plumage that they can fly, wherever it is that they fly from, that's where they call their home. Then they'll come back to southeastern Massachusetts.
Because it's trying to repopulate southeastern Mass loon population. So you got to get the chicks down there to think that that's their home. So they basically stole a chick, legitimately, but stole a chick to bring it down there.
But the challenge is that we're doing this all at nighttime, and especially photographically, it was insane because there's no light except for this one headlamp that they use to lure in the loon chick. Because what happens is they're on the boat, they put the light on the head of the boat, and they move really slowly towards wherever the loons are, and the loons are sort of mesmerized by the light. They can't see what's behind it, but they see it, and then they start doing like little calls here and there that sort of lure them in until they can get close enough, and then like they scoop them up with a net, and that's how they get them. And trying to shoot this was absolutely insane. It was, I'd never done it before, and I was so fortunate that I nailed it the first time, because the other 5 times that I went up, we never caught another loon. So,
But look at that, it's beautiful. Is that that's the little loon?
Yeah, that was the final loon that they released in October. So, yeah, I mean, we started the story in November the previous year. Most of the work was done during the summertime. I think the first trip I made to Maine was sometime in June, but this was in October. And so basically when they bring the loons down, they have to be a certain age. They have to be at least 9 or 10 months old before they're ready to fly. And once they get to that point, then they release them. This was the final one that got released, and there's actually kind of a funny story that goes with this one, because the final one, after I put all this work into covering this, the final loon. As it's being released, I'm out in the water in my muck boots, and I'm just leaning down, and the loon starts swimming towards me, and it attacked me. I have photos of it. It's literally like hanging off the lens hood of my camera.
I'm sure you asked for it.
Are you okay?
I was a little traumatized, but as you can see, I got the beauty shot. So.
The loon appreciates that. So another story about the environment and people. Robin, you found a way to tell the story of Plum Island visually. And Simón, I wonder if you can tell us what the story was all about first.
Yeah. So Plum Island, for all you who aren't familiar, up off the North Shore, passing Gloucester, it's in Massachusetts. It's like a little crescent off the coast of Massachusetts, and it's, as you can see from these photos, it's people live very close to the rising seas. And there was a story that I found about a guy in the south of Plum Island and a guy in the north of Plum Island who were polar opposites. So the guy in the north was planting seagrass on the dunes in front of his property, a beautiful home that he had built with his husband, and going through the state to get the right permits, and this kind of quixotic idea that planting a little bit of seagrass would fend off the rising seas, maybe for a season or two, but not over the centuries, most likely. He was trying to sell his house. And then in the south, or to the south of there, in Newbury, there was a gentleman who, more of a blue collar guy, I think he was a contractor, who decided to say, to hell with the state, I'm just going to bring in the heavy equipment and boulders and properly create defenses against the ocean. And these people here are really on the front lines. I mean,
Excuse me for 1 second.
Yeah.
That's Robin, the photographer, down there. Down here
You
on
see
the right.
Robin in that
on the
photo?
far right, yes.
How do you do that?
As soon as you finish this part, I want Robin to talk about how he was using a drone. You can see a tiny white thing in his right hand, and that's the drone controller. But Simón, please finish what you're saying.
Well, that was the thing. So you see these stones here, and this guy, I don't know if we have photos of this gentleman's property, but you're supposed to go through the state and there's a whole bureaucracy you're supposed to follow. And this guy was like, hey, the state's too slow. They're not going to let me do it. Screw it. I'm going to bring in heavy equipment literally, and was just like doing it DIY style. So I thought it was a great contrast with the guy planting grass. But this guy, he was committed to staying. And and Robin said, drone, this is an opportunity for drone.
So you have to get kind of a license to do that. And how did it, I mean, obviously it works so beautifully on this story, but what were you mindful of as you were deciding what to take drone photos of?
I think I wanted just, I'm sorry. I think I was just trying to illustrate Simón's story, as we always are when we go out. We're trying to illustrate the stories that our reporters are working on. But I think the sort of money shot for this whole series is that shot from way up north of the island, when you're looking down on it, and you can see the estuary on one side and the sea on the ocean on the other, and there's just this tiny flat piece of land with these houses on. I went at 7 a.m, so it would catch the sun. You can see the early sun is still on one side of the house, so you've got the shadows to give it a little bit of depth on the buildings. But I just thought it really, you could imagine a wave coming off the ocean and just going right the way across a lot of them. So, and that's what the drone is good for. Yeah. Standing back and getting an idea of the context of what you're looking at. So that's what I tried to do.
Right. I wonder if we can now go to the city, the center of the city, where One Dalton Street caught our attention for a story that, again, Simón, you and this time with Jesse covered. This is the third highest building in Boston after the Hancock Tower and the Prudential building. And you, God, how did you get up there?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember
both of
that
you.
one.
Right, yeah. What do
Am
you
I in there somewhere?
Yeah.
I remember riding up that elevator shaft with the workers. It was like, what, 4:30 in the morning? It was really early.
It was early.
And it was a cold. Is that me?
No.
No.
That's
one of the workers.
That's the crane operator.
Walking over a ladder. Can you go back to that last one?
I don't know if you can.
No. So there we go. So basically, again, third highest building in Boston, and our assignment was to go to the top of it with the crane operators and see what it's like up there. Get a nice view of the city.
This is how many stories?
So here we're on the 59th floor of the Dalton building, and
The very top of the building.
pretty much, yeah. I mean, I think there was might have been one or two more floors, but I mean, we were under the impression that we were just going to go right into the crane. I mean, there's
Yeah, that the cab, that the crane operator works in, like goes up and down like an elevator. That's kind of what I assumed.
but no, you have to cross.
This is Suffolk Construction, like one of the biggest construction firms in the country. And I probably should have asked some of the questions about how to prepare for this. But the cab doesn't come down.
Maybe it usually does.
You
They shut
go
it off
up,
when you went.
And then they lay a ladder from the building, 59 stories up, to the crane structure, which you can see there. It's literally like a ladder, and I don't know.
There are two
probably
pieces of
15
wood
feet.
that are laid on top of the ladder, and then
Give it a little structural.
And then there's some
rigidity.
structural like railings that they put on the side, and then this flimsy blue stuff. And that's the crane operator. He was out. He walked out, and I am thinking to myself, no.
By the way, Jesse, what was the temperature and like the wind
It was like
chill factor?
17 degrees.
So
that
this is-
morning.
this is
Yeah, it
like-
was really cold. Plus the 25-mile-an-hour wind chill. It was like -2.
So,
with the
So
wind
nobody
chill.
at Suffolk thought to say, "Hey, like bring a hat, gloves. You're gonna be climbing up what I want to say 3 or 4 stories that we climbed inside that scaffolding
Yeah,
structure
there were
to
like
get
5
into this.
16-foot ladders inside that structure, and then we had to climb through the with the hub there. What do you call it? That the crane actually is on, so it's all greasy. And I mean, I've got cameras on my shoulders. I'm like trying to navigate.
I
through this.
almost didn't make it. I'm asthmatic, and I'm like, I could feel the altitude, and my ears are exposed. I felt like they were gonna like shatter.
glass. I
Yeah,
think you wrote in
I
the
mean-
story they were like
And
glass.
I'm watching Jesse, like, dude, I don't know if I had to stop and rest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm watching him. He's going up, and I'm like, that's my subject. I got to follow him. I have to keep going. And finally, I get to the top, and my fingers are frozen solid.
So
It's like-
there's a consequence to that. Tell us about like the greatest shot
Yeah,
that you
one of
could
the-
have gotten.
So we get into the crane cab, and there's this beautiful sunrise coming up over the Harbor Islands, and I can't move my fingers and shoot the shot. I was so bummed.
It was an
It took
amazing
20
view.
minutes for my fingers to finally thaw out.
Wow. Oh yeah,
after
I remember
that.
this. I
But
hadn't
the
seen
views
these in a
up
long
there were
time.
amazing. I mean, that guy has with the exception of trying to get to work, has the greatest job.
Yeah, that was on the ladder crossing
Yeah,
over.
that's crossing the ladder.
Oh, there's
there.
A
Simone.
real makeshift operation, and you look down over the side, and it's like
Yeah, when he looked
59
down,
stories.
when he looked over the side, I was just like, oh my God, no, we can't do this. But we did.
So do we want a quick picture of Mount Washington, or do we want to move on, Stephen, to... Yeah, Andrea, hi. It's so nice to have you here. Thank you
Hi,
for
can you hear
coming.
me? All right.
You're on
Hi,
now.
everybody.
So Andrea covers the arts and so many aspects of the arts so well. And it's a pleasure to hear what you come up with because she has so many contacts in the field. One of the things she's been covering a long time is Boston Calling, the music festival. And you covered it when I think it was down in Copley Square for a while.
For 10 years.
10
So
years,
it started
yeah.
10 years ago. This will be the 11th.
City Hall Plaza, that's right.
Yeah, it started
And-
at City Hall Plaza.
Yep,
There
it
you
is.
go. And it's grown by 3 times since it started there. Now it's at the Harvard Athletic Complex, and it's ginormous. It's Lollapalooza size. Like people think, oh, Boston Calling, it's a small little festival or something. I don't know exactly. Like some people just don't kind of get how huge it has become. And Jesse, we've been covering it, I mean,
A long time.
yeah, a long
Yeah.
time. And, just to give you a little context, I've been an arts and culture reporter and before that a producer for a long time, but well before we had any website or internet or anything, no images. So Jesse, it's been a journey that we've been on together. And the Beaches, great band that I discovered, was my personal discovery at last year's Boston Calling. This is, just stop for 1 second. This is one of my favorite bands, the OCs from California, psych rock. He went to RISD. His name's John Dwyer, but Jesse got this shot. He's very photogenic, you have to admit. But Jesse, we go to I do a lot of pre-coverage. I do a lot of features beforehand, whatever. We come up with all sorts of angles. It was Noah Kahn last year, who, if you don't know who he is, you will. He's up for a Grammy this weekend. He's from Vermont. He actually lives in Watertown, but anyway, Jesse and I run around Boston Calling, but I do usually a lot of pre-coverage, and I get there during the festival, and I do send sound to newscasts. It's Memorial Day weekend, so it's kind of quiet generally news-wise, and newscast is generally quite tired of me by Sunday sending sound, and I'm there in case anything horrendous happens, like an evacuation they had 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago.
Yeah,
the
because of just
evacuation.
lightning storms came ravaging through the festival grounds. But Jesse runs around. There are 4 stages, and he runs around from pit to pit, photo pits. So you can see the photographers there on the right side. And so they're running around just capturing all of these amazing images, but then something like this, which is just a moment, a family moment. And there are so many amazing moments in people's passion.
Getting the people, the festival goers is just as important as the acts themselves. But the acts are challenging because you can't get to every single show. But I do everything that I can to try. But it's I look at the schedule and it's you're trying to hit every single band that you can, and plus we're filing during the day.
Question from the audience: do you ever use an iPhone for your pictures?
If I have to.
Yeah, not bad.
There are moments where I have to.
Like what?
There was an investigative story that I was working on, and although I never used it, I was prepared to. Mainly with investigative stuff. You're chasing around people that don't want to be exposed, or and walking around with 2 cameras on your shoulders is usually a pretty big giveaway that you're press. So we had to go to a theater production for the story that we're working on, and I didn't want to draw a whole lot of attention, so I was.
And you can turn off the click on that,
Right.
put on silence.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. One other interesting thing is when you're covering something like Boston Calling, just very briefly, you have a discrete period of time when you can cover the acts, and not all the acts want photographers there.
No, usually the bigger acts don't, mainly because they're aging.
So this would be like
and want
the Foo
control.
Fighters have their own photographers.
They want control
they
over
wanna make
their
sure they
or
get just
over
the
their
right
image,
shot out to the world.
But we normally get about 15 minutes or 3 songs, whichever comes first. And in the photo pit or the buffer, it's like in between the audience and the artist. So we have real close access to all. You saw many of the photos there. It's like I'm on top of them. But
then some of the great photos you got were from a distance. You actually went where the crowd was. Yeah.
Some of them are, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And you've gotten more access over the years, wouldn't you say? As far as there's a bit of not a pecking order, but there were some times when the festival controllers are only Rolling Stone and, whatever.
Right, or
Pitchfork.
Getty or AP or yeah.
Yeah, but over the years, I feel
Yeah,
like
I mean we've
earned
gotten
their
because
respect
we
and
put the commitment
trust.
we put the commitment into it, and we meet with them prior
Every
to
March, we meet
Yeah.
with the person who organizes the press, and we kind of brainstorm and about what the possible stories might be, and that I think really helps.
Yeah, I think that's how we got access to Metallica. 'Cause
Yeah,
I don't think
that
we
was
would've-
that was a question mark.
Jesse, we covered Bill Belichick's resignation, whatever, a couple weeks ago. We
Yeah.
didn't get that kind of access. I think we need to cover the Patriots a little bit more. We were among 100 reporters and journalists there.
Yeah.
But you got your shot.
Shot at him or of him? Andrea, tell us about the Makers, which is something WBUR only does and does every year, and describe what it is and how you, and in this case Robin, got some really interesting photographs of some emerging artists.
Right. So the Makers is the arts team's annual celebration of creatives of color in Boston, generally emerging artists who are just not quite, they were just on their way up. And we put out a call for nominations. We nominate our own, and it's a very rigorous process to winnow down this list and try to have a broad and different representation of art forms. This is Danny Rivera. You could stop on this shot if you'd like. Thank you.
Close call.
So this was a great, Jesse and I went to a church in was it in Dorchester or Mattapan? Dorchester.
Yeah.
Dorchester, to interview Danny Rivera, who is a very talented, I think he's about 23 right now. He grew up in the church singing gospel and studied gospel music and got fascinated by spirituals, which were songs that were sung by enslaved people, and revived them for this project that he created. And so we went and met him. He was very, very adamant about us meeting at the church, which of course we were absolutely excited about. But this shot right here of Danny, and the shot of him singing is absolutely, his voice is just phenomenal. And he is so passionate and so eloquent. But that shot just captures like his youth, but also you can see the wisdom in his eyes, and like the idea of doing portraits, which is something, it's interesting. Jesse definitely likes action shots, like someone doing something, not just a portrait, which I can get behind a portrait depending on the environment.
I don't hate portraits, but just taking a portrait as a portrait for a story, I try not to.
Yeah, what is your ideal portrait situation? I
mean, if it's a story about a struggle or a person's struggle, if there's like a purpose for a portrait, I'm totally behind it. But if we're taking portraits of a person that's in the story that probably has about 2 sentences in a story as part of like a much larger story. I don't see it.
Right.
It's sort of the photo editing, thing in my head that goes off, and I'm like, immediately it's just like, I don't want to see that. I'd much rather put my efforts into doing something that's going to pertain more to the story, more, whatever is happening in the story, rather than it just being like, oh, well, this person's in that story.
Right.
This person's in the story. This person's in the story.
Right. So this is a portrait that Robin took of Jay Shia, who's a motorcycle artist. She also owns the only custom motorcycle shop that takes care of, vintage motorcycles, every kind of motorcycle you could imagine in the Boston area. She owns this shop. But she's also makes art bikes that have been shown in museums, and she just welds together all of these pieces that are she just finds them, vintage pieces.
Lawnmower here. And the piece before was a bit of a microphone.
Can we go back actually to Jay? Shia, please? Thanks.
And the bit before wasn't it a microscope? It was a bit
This
of a
one or
microscope.
which?
Actually, the previous, can we go back to the previous one, please?
So this is the sort of the
It's a-
lighthouse of a microscope, wasn't that it?
Yes, that's it.
One of them had a saxophone as the
exhaust pipe.
Yeah.
Very creative,
Very
great
creative.
family story of her Lebanese family coming over, and they were all metal workers in Lebanon, but when they came over here, they became mechanics, and she was working on bikes basically as a kid. She did end up going to art school for photography, and then ended up adopting a friend's child and needed to make money, so started doing mechanics in the backyard of her family's house. Ultimately, just took off, and her mastery is just sought out by motorcycle riders. But then this art, she was able to fulfill, all of a sudden she was invited to participate in a museum show of motorcycle art, or motorcycles as art. And she just was able to spread her wings and fulfill this part of herself that was burbling underneath, just having to, be out there fixing, all the stuff that mechanic stuff that isn't necessarily aesthetic. But Robin was incredible. I mean, that was like the space was amazing, just right visually. It must have been like a candy shop for you as a photographer.
It was amazing. And the one with her with all those sparks flying all over the place, absolutely. That's I think when we're looking for a portrait, right, we're looking for. I want to get somebody at work doing what they do, telling the narrative of their own story in a picture.
So that leads us to the final question and the final pictures, and that is your favorite pictures from each of you. Jesse, you first?
I'm first.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, this is hard to pick your favorite photo. It's like picking your favorite child.
Are you looking at...
That's one of them right there in front. I have two favorite children. So I just decided to pick something that was recent, and this was something that I just shot last year that I liked a lot, and some great stories to go along with it. But I just love the shot. It's just compositionally, the shadows and the light, all the light just just glistening off of the pallbearers. And
What's the event?
the great thing about this shot is that I kind of felt, darn, this is Mel King's funeral. And as a kid, growing up in Greater Boston, I grew up in Cambridge, so if not, everyone knew Mel King back in the 70s, and it's kind of like if you didn't get through a newscast or like reading a newspaper and you didn't see Mel King's name, you knew it was like a slow news day, And I knew how much he meant, to the city of Boston and then the area. So I was really jacked about like shooting this funeral, getting to this point, I had no idea that I would even like get the shot. I had elected to stay in. All the other photographers that were there elected to go outside to get the casket coming out, and I hung out waiting for the casket, the procession to come down through the center aisle of the church, and the shot didn't really work out, and I was kind of like, Ugh. And so as the procession's turning and it's going into the foyer here, I started following it, and I'm looking at the light, and the light's getting darker and darker and darker, and I'm like, this is cool, And literally, I saw this just happen, and it's just one of those moments that just all of a sudden like happened out of the blue. It wasn't something that I anticipated. It wasn't, And I basically took my camera and just started shooting it from like really, really high. The best part of this photo, and I don't know if you can zoom into the photo, but if you look outside, you can see the photographers from the Globe, the Herald, the City of Boston. They're all out there waiting for the freaking casket to come out. And I got this shot instead.
I love that. Robin?
I win.
You won.
Yeah, very hard to pick a favorite picture. Sorry, very hard to pick a favorite picture. So I look back and I picked this one from last year, which when I took it, I kind of fell in love with it a little bit.
Where is this?
Just beautiful. It's in Merrimack in New Hampshire. I love it because it's kind of Ansel Adamsy, and I love Ansel Adams. The perfect, pristine snow on the pine trees. But of course, that's not why we were there. We were there because there's a plastics factory just up the road here. And they've been making all those things that we use in our non-stick pans, or anything that has, the coats that resist water, pizza boxes that don't have the grease when you put the pizza. All these things include PFAS, which is.
See, I ruin every picture.
No, I was going to try PFAS, which are these chemicals which can get into your body and do no good, and. The woman who owns that house has discovered that her well water that she draws from this pristine environment is so polluted with PFAS that she can't drink it. And so the picture to me is a reminder. I think it's a beautiful picture, but it's also a reminder of, how we need to take better care of the planet.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all so much. Jesse, Robin, Barbara, Simón, Andrea, thank you.
Thank you all for taking the time to come out and spend some time with our journalism tonight. Thank you again to Jesse, Robin, Lisa, Andrea, Barb, and Simón. Can you give them another round of applause, please? And I'd like to give you all a round of applause as well. Thank you again for all you do to make our work possible. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.